This is the first album by Steely Dan, Can't Buy a Thrill. This came out in 1972. The band in later years would say this was one of the most hideous record album covers of the 70s. I got to disagree. It's not one of the greatest, but it's not bad, and there's certainly more that were quite a bit more hideous. And in fact, I don't understand these, the simulated water drops. But the design isn't bad. This reminds me of the Late Night with David Letterman logo from the late 80s. And the album itself is great. This was on the Rolling Stone 500 Greatest Albums of All Time, and rightfully so. It's just packed wall to wall with great tunes. There's Do It Again, the first song on each and side one, and Real in the Years, first song on side two. Those were the hits that you usually hear on classic rock radio to this day, and oldies radio. But all the other songs are pretty good too. And the one thing that's different, you'll notice this. What? Who's that? David Palmer. They had been sold, Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, as songwriters to ABC Records, and somebody said, why don't you put together a band, make your own song? So they did. They got these session cats, and Jeff Skunk Baxter, you probably know him more from the Doobie Brothers, and Elliot Randall, there he is, yeah, and Victor Feldman. These guys would work with them in later years. They were sessioneers. They weren't technically part of the band. But they put together this band to go out on tour, and they had David Palmer as the vocalist until someone realized, Donald Fagen singing is pretty good. We're just going to have him. And actually, if you look at the final tally, I think Donald Fagen sings almost all the songs except David Palmer only does Dirty Work. That was in American Hustle, if you remember that song. Jim Hodder, the drummer, sings this song. He sings another one, I think, too. And let's look. Oh, there's another one by David Palmer. I forgot he did too. Maybe it was him I'm thinking of. So, of the 10 songs in the album, 7 are sung by Donald Fagen. Jim Hodder, the drummer, sings one. David Palmer, the quote-unquote singer, who left right after this, he went to a band called the Grand Wahoo. He does 2, and he does one where he sings along with Donald Fagen. But anyhow, that's the breakdown of this album. It's a great disc. This pressing is bizarre to me. I've never understood. I got this probably in 1994 at the Record Exchange, which is a chain in Northeast Ohio, and it's also in Chicago. So you'll notice the number, MCA, that's not the original number. The original number when this came out was probably 4 digits, and it was on ABC Records. MCA took over ABC in about 79, and that's one of the reasons Gaucho by Steely Dan took 3 years to come to market, because they didn't want to record for ABC, and they didn't want MCA, and they didn't want MCA to jack up the price of that album, which they did. So that was part of the dispute. There's many reasons Gaucho took forever. But this is clearly a reissue from the late 70s, because this is the inner sleeve, and I have to assume it's original, and it's advertising the Superstar Savings, basically all of the albums from ABC, from Uni, which was the arm of Universal, and other labels that MCA had consolidated and taken over by then. This was advertising all their reissues of that. So you see a lot of well-known artists: Stephen Bishop, Jimmy Buffett, J.J. Cale, Cher, Roy Clark, Crosby and Nash, Merle Haggard in later years, Tom Petty, obviously, Olivia Newton-John, Olivia Neutron Bomb, Leonard Skinner, John Clemmer. This, Touch, where is it? Oh, they didn't get Touch. It's a great make-out record. And it's not on here, but he was signed to Cadet, because John Clemmer's from Chicago. Cadet, which was Chess's jazz subsidiary, and his album Blowin' Gold is quite good. The cover is very psychedelic. It's from 68 or 69. But Elton John, obviously, probably their biggest star, him and Neil Diamond at the time, and Steely Dan and Olivia Newton-John. The Who. See, these are all clearly reissues, because they all go sequentially and they have different numbers. Their albums were originally coming out on Decca, which were that, and Uni and ABC, again, were some of the labels that got taken over. I didn't know that was part of this. Ronald Reagan and Poco, Rufus with Shaka Khan. And see, sequentially they did all of these albums by Steely Dan, by MCA Records. So the reason that this is even more interesting, it's an ABC album, reissued on MCA with the MCA jacket and inner sleeve, but look at this. This is the label, and I never understood this, and I still don't, on MCA Coral. It's very weird. Is this a Canadian thing? I always thought that, but no, it's clearly the American address. It doesn't say manufactured in Canada or anything. And the sound's phenomenal, far better than the Black Label ABC Records original pressings that I've heard over the years. So I'm not sure what's going on with this reissue and the reason for this label. I've seen these sometimes on the MCA label, but remember MCA Coral? Coral, by the way, was I think, Decca subsidiary from the 40s or 50s that was long gone by this point, and the only records I've ever seen on there that were really notable were by Buddy Holly. Sure, there's others. You can chime in below and correct me, but MCA Coral, I've just never heard of that, and it makes sense that Coral's part of MCA. It's back catalog from decades before, but to put it out on this, but not indicate Coral on the label, I mean on the jacket, and then to have this sound so much better than the other reissues, either on ABC or MCA, just flabbergasts me. But it's a great album, and it sounds great, and I've never seen another one of these.